The CIA has a long history of covert influence and regime change without direct military invasion. That's not a line from a spy thriller, it's reality. A strategy shaped not on the battlefield, but in shadowy offices and diplomatic halls. Since the 1950s, the CIA has worked behind the scenes to influence, manipulate, and even overthrow foreign governments, without ever deploying a single soldier. No tanks, no bombs, just briefcases, blackmail, and a deep understanding of psychological warfare. To some, it's called foreign policy. To others, regime change. This is the story of how the CIA topples governments, without firing a bullet. Operation Ajax, Iran, 1953. Let's rewind to the early 1950s. Iran had something the West desperately wanted: oil. For decades, British oil companies had controlled Iran's vast petroleum reserves, reaping enormous profits while the Iranian people remained poor. But in 1951, Iran's parliament made a bold decision. They nationalized the oil industry, cutting off foreign control. At the center of this decision was Mohammad Mosaddegh, Iran's democratically elected prime minister. He wasn't a communist. He wasn't anti-West. He was a nationalist who believed Iran's resources should benefit Iranians. To Britain and the United States, this was unacceptable. Mosaddegh was labeled a threat, not because of extremism, but because of independence. The British government approached Washington and asked for help. The CIA obliged. The mission was named Operation Ajax, and it would become the blueprint for covert regime change. Here's how the CIA executed the plan. Media manipulation. The CIA paid Iranian newspapers to publish fake stories linking Mosaddegh to communism. They portrayed him as a puppet of Moscow, a dangerous narrative during the Cold War. Manufactured chaos. Paid agents and local criminals were hired to incite riots. Protests turned violent. Shops were looted. Innocent civilians were hurt. And all of it was staged and designed to make the government seem weak and unstable. Bribery of officials. The CIA funneled money to military officers, religious leaders, and politicians. In return, they turned against Mosaddegh. False flag demonstrations. CIA-backed groups posed as communists to scare the public. The idea was to make it seem like the country was on the brink of a Soviet-style revolution. Empowering the Shah. The CIA built up support for Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, Iran's monarch, framing him as a hero who could save the country from chaos. On August 19, 1953, the coup succeeded. Mosaddegh was arrested and placed under house arrest. The Shah returned with full control, backed by American dollars and British oil interests. To the CIA, it was a success, but to the Iranian people, it was betrayal. This operation sparked decades of resentment, eventually culminating in the 1979 Islamic Revolution, a violent uprising that overthrew the Shah and turned Iran into a theocratic republic. But in 1953, the CIA had found its formula. It could now reshape nations without military occupation, just manipulation and subversion. Chile, Operation Fubelt. 2 decades later, the CIA would deploy a similar strategy, this time in South America. The country, Chile. The target, Salvador Allende, the world's first democratically elected Marxist president. In 1970, Allende won the presidency on promises of social reform. He vowed to nationalize copper mines, push land reforms, and reduce Chile's dependency on U.S. corporations. To the Nixon administration, this was a red flag. In fact, President Nixon gave a chilling order to the CIA. According to declassified CIA documents, Nixon ordered the agency to prevent Allende's election or unseat him, instructing them to make the economy scream. The operation was named Fubelt, and once again, no troops were deployed. Just economic sabotage, political manipulation, and covert influence. Key tactics included media control. The CIA funneled money into Chilean radio stations, newspapers, and TV networks. Their goal? To vilify Allende and sway public opinion. Economic strangulation. American corporations halted trade. Loans were blocked. Exports dropped. The Chilean economy suffered deeply. Food shortages grew and inflation soared. Engineered strikes. With CIA money, right-wing labor unions, including truckers and copper miners, staged mass strikes. They disrupted supply chains and crippled daily life. Military infiltration. CIA operatives cultivated relationships with Chilean military leaders, secretly encouraging them to consider a coup. Bribes and logistical support followed. On September 11, 1973, the plan climaxed. The Chilean military, led by General Augusto Pinochet, stormed the presidential palace. Salvador Allende refused to flee. He reportedly died by suicide in his office, defending democracy until the end. Pinochet seized power and ruled for 17 years, a reign marked by torture, disappearances, and executions. And yes, he had U.S. support. Another democracy destroyed, another success story in the CIA's growing playbook of regime change. The CIA's Global Regime Change Playbook. By the 1970s, these operations were no longer exceptions. They were patterns, steps in a reliable formula used around the world. Some now refer to it as the CIA Regime Change Playbook. Let's break down the steps. 1. Destabilize the economy. Use sanctions, trade disruptions, and covertly fund strikes. Create suffering among the population. Then blame the sitting government for mismanaging the country. Control the narrative. Fund local journalists, radio personalities, and opposition figures to paint the leadership as corrupt, erratic, or communist, even if they're not. Create panic and disillusionment. Split the military. Identify and support military officers willing to defect. Offer bribes, safety guarantees, or post-coup leadership roles. Undermine loyalty from within. Spark chaos, offer order. Stage protests, riots, or even staged violence. Then present a new leader, often a military strongman, as the only solution to restore stability. These psychological and economic tactics, combined with media control and selective support, proved to be more powerful than military invasions, and far less politically costly. By the late 1980s, the CIA had influenced or orchestrated regime change in over 25 countries according to academic estimates and declassified records. Snapshots of silent wars. Let's look at a few more real-world examples that followed this same template. Guatemala, 1954. Operation PB success. President Jacobo Arbenz proposed land reforms that threatened the United Fruit Company, a massive U.S. corporation. The CIA launched a psychological operation, creating a fake rebel army, broadcasting false reports of impending invasions, and spreading panic. Arbenz resigned under pressure, and a military dictatorship took over, one that would spark a civil war lasting decades. Congo, 1960. The assassination of Patrice Lumumba. After Congo gained independence from Belgium, Lumumba became its first prime minister. He wasn't communist, but he accepted Soviet aid, a move the CIA saw as dangerous. The agency worked with Belgian operatives to remove him. He was eventually captured, tortured, and executed. His death remains one of the darkest chapters in Cold War Africa. Nicaragua, 1980s. The Iran-Contra scandal. This was a deviation from the usual model, but still rooted in covert influence. The CIA facilitated the sale of weapons to Iran and funneled the money to the Contras, a right-wing rebel group fighting the socialist Sandinistas. It was a hidden war, run out of secret bank accounts and arms deals, and it nearly brought down the Reagan administration when exposed. In all these cases, the CIA rarely got its hands dirty, but its fingerprints were everywhere. From Tehran to Santiago, from Congo to Managua, the CIA has left fingerprints across modern history. Sometimes the goal was protecting American interests. Sometimes it was ideological, stopping the spread of communism. But the cost was often democracy, stability, and innocent lives. The question now is not whether the CIA can change regimes, but whether it should. And as new powers rise and global influence shifts, many wonder, is the playbook still in use? And if so, who's next? If you found this video informative, then don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.